This video is for the quadratics module and we'll be looking at section Quad E. In this section we're looking at factorising quadratics for other cases, and it's going to be for quadratics of the form x squared plus bx plus c, so we have no coefficient of x squared, and b and c are constants. The factors of the last number c have to add to the middle coefficient b, and we'll show how to do that. So these factors are the numbers that are in each of the brackets for the factorised quadratic. So let's investigate this further. The signs of b and c determine whether the quadratic factors are sums or differences. So you can see I can have x squared plus or minus bx plus or minus c. Now if I have a plus c, I'm going to have the same signs in both brackets. If I have minus c, I'm going to have different signs in each of the brackets. Okay? Now if I have a plus b, then the largest factor is going to be positive. If I have a minus b, the largest factor is going to be negative. Okay? Now looking at this in a flowchart form, if c is positive, the factors can be either both positive or both negative, because two positive numbers multiply to give a positive and two negative numbers multiplied by each other give a positive. Now if b is positive, both factors are positive. If b is negative, both factors are negative. Okay? Now if c is negative, one factor is positive and the other is negative. Okay? If b is positive, then the largest factor is going to be positive, and if b is negative, the largest factor is going to be negative. You'll probably come back and listen to this again once we start practicing. So hence the signs of the bracket factors will be as follows. If I've got x squared plus bx plus c, I'm going to have both pluses. If I've got x squared minus bx plus c, then they're both going to be negatives. Okay? If I've got x squared plus bx minus c, I have to have a plus and a minus. If I've got x squared minus bx minus c, I'm going to have a minus and a plus. And this is where the largest factor is in the first bracket. This will make more sense when we start doing some examples. To determine the factors to use for factorising, it's useful to list all of the factor pairs of the constant c and then choose the pair that satisfies the condition of being added to b. Remember that if there is a common factor, that it should be factored out first. So let's look at the first lot of examples. I have x squared plus 6a plus 8. And it says to factorise the following quadratics. So in this case, my c term is positive. Okay? So that means that my two factors either have to be both positive or both negative. Okay? Now because my b is also positive, I'm going to have two positive factors. Okay? Now the factors of 8 are 1, 8, 2, 4, and the two factors that add to give my b term are 2 and 4. So what I have here is that a squared plus 6a plus 8 has to be a plus 2, a plus 4. Okay? Next one, b squared plus 3b minus 18. Now c is going to be negative and b is positive. So that means I'm going to have one positive factor and one negative factor. Okay, if I look at my factors of 18, I have 18 and 1, I have 3 and 6, and I have 9 and 2. Now one of them is going to be a negative and one is going to be a positive. Now because my b term is a positive, then I know the smallest factor has to be the negative. So the smallest factor has to be the negative. So it's going to be negative 1, negative 3, negative 2. So let's look at the difference. 18 minus 1 is 17. Negative 3 plus 6 is 3. 9 take 2 is 7. So my b term is there, which is 3. So b squared plus 3b minus 18 ends up being b minus 3, b plus 6. Okay? Looking at the next one, coefficients of each term have a common factor of 2, so let's factorise that out first. And now look what's in the middle. Our last term is positive, okay, so I can either have 2 negative or 2 positive factors. Because this middle term is negative, I know they're going to have to be 2 negative factors. Factors of 12 are 1 and 12, they both need to be negative. 6 and 2, they both need to be negative, or 3 and 4. And again, I just realised a mistake, sorry about this. That there should be 6. Seems better? Okay, so let's go. Factors of 6, 6 and 1, and they both have to be negative. 3 and 2, and they both have to be negative. Now negative 3 take 2 gives me my 5. So it ends up being 2 bracket y take 3, y take 2. Okay, next one, 3x squared minus 9x minus 30. We can bring the 3 out and have x squared minus 3x minus 10. So you don't make the mistake like I did previously. Expand it out quickly. 3x squared minus 9x minus 30, all good. Last term is negative and the middle term is negative, so we're going to have one positive and one negative factor, and the largest factor needs to be negative to give that negative term. So factors of 10 are 10 and 1, the largest one would have to be negative. 5 and 2, the largest one would have to be negative. Now negative 5 plus 2, it gives me negative 3. So it's going to be 3 bracket x minus 5, x plus 2. Okay? Let's look at an alternative method for factorising, and that's the cross method. Now in the cross method, we simply draw a cross. On the left-hand side of the cross, we have the first term. On the right-hand side of the cross, we have our last term, and then we put our middle term in the middle. Now this isn't in the textbook, so you might want to listen to this again. On this side of the cross, we need 2 things that multiply to give that first term. So it's going to be a times a is a squared. 2 things that multiply to give the 8 here and add to give 6. Okay, so 2 things that multiply to give 8 and add to give 6 would be 2 and 4. Okay, so on this cross here I have 2a, and on this cross here I have 4a. So 2a plus 4a is 6a. And then to read it off, you just read across like this. So I've got a plus 2, a plus 4. Okay, next one, draw the cross. First term, last term, add to give the middle term. 2 things that multiply to give b squared would be b and b. 2 things that multiply to give negative 18. So and add to give 3b. So I know one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. So I say 3 and 6. I need it to be a positive 3b, so the smaller factor needs to be negative. So I have negative 3b plus 6b is 3b. So this becomes b minus 3, b plus 6. Okay, next one, factor out. Now look at our cross. We have y squared, we have 6, and we have negative 5y. 2 things that multiply to give y squared. 2 things that multiply to give 6, but add to give negative 5. I know that they both have to be negative factors. So negative 3, negative 2. Negative 3 take 2 is negative 5. So I read across. I get 2 bracket y take 3, y take 2. Okay, last one, factor out. Now looking, x squared, negative 10, negative 3x. 2 things that multiply to give x squared. 2 things that multiply to give negative 10 and add to give negative 3. We're thinking about the factors of 10. 5 and 2 has a difference of 3. If I have negative 5 plus 2, that gives me my negative 3. So it's 3. Again, read across. So I have x take 5, x plus 2. Okay, so that's an alternative method for factorising quadratics. I'm going to leave it there. So, now what to do now? Well, I've kind of split this section up a little bit. So if you look at exercise quad E1 in the textbook, you can't do it all yet, but you can definitely do the first column. You can definitely do up to part 14 as well. So just practice that before we move on.